Now we want to go over how to properly measure the bird carcass to select the proper size body. One of the first measures that we want to take is going to be from where the neck starts on the body to the base of the tail, which is going to be 6.5 inches. We will just do a quick size check with our body that matches up to 6.5 inches. We want to do a girth measurement, which is going to be the circumference of the carcass. Measure right around, come right in front of the thighs. It's going to be 12.5 inches. We'll come over and just double check the measurement on our body. And again, we're right at 12.5 inches, a perfect fitting body. One of the next measurements that we want to take is the measurement of the neck thickness and the neck length. We're going to use our calipers to determine the thickness of the neck. It's going to measure the neck. It's 1 inch, so we're going to use 1 inch necking. You can buy this necking from any taxidermy supplier. The next thing that we want to measure is the length of the neck. We want to come from right where the base of the neck starts to the tip. That's going to be 5.5 inches. So we will come over to our bird necking, measure out 5.5 inches, and we will cut right at the 5.5 inch mark. One straight cut. The next measurement that we want to make is the wing joint measurement. So we want to come to right where our wing joints start on the carcass. Take our calipers, lightly press in on those joints. That's going to give us 1.5 inches. We'll come over to our bird body, measure it again, and this is 1.5 inches as well. So this is a perfect size body for this pheasant. The body that we're going to be using today is a Farabee pheasant body. We bought this from Mackenzie Taxidermy Supply. There's a lot of very good pheasant bodies on the market. I would suggest trying some different ones and seeing which one works best for you, but today we're using a Farabee pheasant body. We want to remove some of this excess tissue from around the eyes. There's a little bit of a membrane that runs around the eyes. We're going to trim that off. If you don't, it's going to be hard to set these eye rings that run around the pheasant's eye. So we are just going to come with our scissors and snip off this membrane. If you cut through, don't worry about it too much. This can easily be fixed with epoxy during the finishing process. Oftentimes these wattles will be shot up anyways, and so you have to come in with epoxy and fix those. But we're just going to trim right around the eye and get rid of this membrane. Makes for a much nicer looking eye set. Go ahead and do the other side here as well. Right, so we've removed all the membrane from around that eye as well. There's a lot of corncob grit still on this skin around the head. We want to take a wire brush and remove that. It's going to make it a little bit tricky otherwise to attach our artificial bird head. You could have some corncob grit around your glue line. This is also a good time to trim off any excess skin, like this little bit of skin right here. We're going to come ahead and take our scissors and just remove that little bit of membrane. That way we have a nice, clean, crisp skin juncture around the head. Blow off any excess that may have fell onto the bird. Right now we want to prep the body for mounting, so we're going to set this pheasant aside temporarily. We want to start by cutting out the tail slot area. We're going to cut this a little oversized, so make sure we have plenty of room to put our tail in. Cut from the top and a cut from the bottom. As you can see, now we have a lot of room to put our tail feather quills into. Gives a lot of play. We're going to use a 12 gauge wire to attach the bird neck to the body, you want to sharpen this one of the ends. Go ahead and run this wire right through the center of the bird necking. We'll now take the end of the wire and come right to the center of where the neck's supposed to be on the body. We're going to kind of push this straight through, and we're going to come out somewhere right down in here. The reason why we want to come out down here and not come up at an angle like this is if you were to come up at an angle like this and you start bending your neck around, there's a strong chance that on this seam line the wire might loosen up or come out. So we want to have a nice sturdy strong neck, so we're going to push the wire all the way down near the tail. Clinch this off. Tighten up our neck right to the form. We're only going to need to leave about 1 inch of wire on here, just enough so we can attach the artificial bird head. We're going to go ahead and loop this around just to make it a little bit easier for when we push the neck material through the bird neck, it doesn't catch on the skin and tear in some holes. That's pretty much all you have to do to prep the body for mounting. We will now start inserting the body into the bird. And we want to start by pushing these ends of wire into where the wing joints are supposed to be. So some of these forms have predetermined holes lined up. These Farabee ones have holes. You can use those as alignment points to push the wire into. Let's start on this side. I'm just going to push the wire right through that hole, right out the other side. Same with the other side. Now we don't want to clinch these up tight yet. We want to start inverting the neck into this neck area. So we're going to bend the neck down, pull the neck skin up, and kind of push it into the neck area. And we're going to start feeding the neck skin onto the neck. Pull it all the way through and come out the head. At this point, we can bring these wings right up to the mannequin. And we'll clinch this side over. You want to make sure you're nice and tight. Pull on the wire to make sure that's a very secure, snug fit. Bend the wire over, pound it into the form. We'll repeat the process on the other side. Taxi this neck skin back up a little bit, just so it doesn't start tearing. Pull it tight. Place it into that joint area. Start to align the wings by pulling them back in a natural formation. Keep inverting this neck. Pull the breast feathers up and the skin right onto the form. Straighten out the neck. All right, now the wings have been attached. We want to move on to attaching the legs. So we are going to pull this back skin up onto the form. Find our locator hole on these Farabee forms. We're going to run our wire right through the body and push it through the other side. You can see the wires came through the other side. We want to have a little bit more wire coming out than that. So we're going to keep feeding this wire along the leg. Now we want to bend this wire over. Then we're going to pull it back into the form mannequin. Nice snug fit. As you can see, we have some excess here. You want to push the leg bone right up against the body, right like that. This leg bone has been attached. We'll move on to the other side. Again, we want to bring this skin up onto the form. Push the wire right through the other side. Slightly change the angle. It's coming through at kind of a hard angle to bend the wire. As you can see, the wires come through the other side. We'll now repeat the process of bending it over and pulling it right back in to the form. Nice snug fit. And we will again butt the leg bone right up to the mannequin, right like that. Start to pull these leg wires up. Now, if this was a standing pheasant, we'd use a heavier gauge leg wire and we'd keep this wire attached. But because this is a flying bird, we can actually go ahead and cut this excess wire off at this point. So we'll come right up against the pad and snip this wire. We'll repeat that on the other leg as well. Start to bend these legs into a more natural pose. Pull them down, bend up. Now the legs and the wings are attached. We're going to go ahead and attach the wire to support the bird on the driftwood. We're going to use a 10 gauge wire to connect the bird to the piece of driftwood. So we want to sharpen one of the ends of the 10 gauge wire. Pull out this little bit of excess. And this bird is going to be flying to the right. So we want to come in onto the right side of the bird, which is going to be the back side of the bird on the wall. So the bird will be facing this way and the wire will be coming out this side of the bird. If we want it to go to the left, we turn the bird like this and run the wire off of this side of the bird. So we want to run this wire right in this area underneath these breast feathers. You want to kind of align your skin so that, because when you put this wire through, it's going to be difficult to taxi the skin around. So you want to start to place that skin where it needs to be at this point. Again, we're going to push it right through to the other side. We're going to bend the wire over. And just push right into the mannequin. You can pound it in if you need to. At this point, we want to start the caulking process. We're going to caulk right around this neck joint area. We're going to apply some caulking around these wing joints, and if necessary, we'll run some caulking along the side of the bird just to help hold everything in place and lock everything down and rebuild any areas that we might need. So we will inject a small amount of caulking right at the base of the neck. This is just going to lock the neck joint in once this caulk dries. We're going to come right to where these wing joints are, inject another small amount of caulking, and we can manipulate this during the final positioning process to get that right where we want it. Repeat the process on the other side. You don't need a lot of caulking, just enough to stabilize that wing for the drying process. And we'll run a small bead down around the side of the pheasant on both sides. Now we want to rebuild the crop area of the pheasant, which is right in here. We're going to take a small amount of this cotton and push that right into that caulking. That's going to hold it in place and rebuild the crop area. It's important that after you caulk the bird that you make sure that the feathers don't get into the caulking. It can be kind of hard to get it out of the feathers, so you want to just pull the skin up and make sure your feathers don't fall into your caulking. Kind of smooth everything out so everything's looking very nice. We can now start sewing up the bird. Now we want to start sewing the belly incision. We are going to start right at the top of the belly incision. Make a couple of half knots to secure this. I'm going to cut out the excess string. Then we're going to use the same stitch that we used to sew up the holes, an over and under stitch. It's important when you're sewing up this incision that you don't get the feathers in the seam. So you just want to come right along the skin. If you remember when we had skinned this out, we had separated those feathers and there was an area of skin on each side. That's what we want to sew into. Just kind of separating the feathers as I go. If it looks like you're starting to get a lot of feathers in your seam, you can slightly dampen these feathers and push them out of the way. That can help to keep them out. And we're just going to work our way doing this over and under stitch down the entire length of the seam right down to the vent. We're just continuing to work our way right down the seam, doing an over and under stitch, keeping the feathers out of the seam as much as possible. We're making our stitches about 1/4 inch apart. It can actually be helpful if you use your fingers to kind of part the feathers out of the way. The skin is starting to dry out a little bit, so if I had to do a lot more sewing, I would come and moisten this skin. All right, so now that we've made our way all the way down to the end of the incision, I'm not going to tie this off tight. I'm going to pull it tight, and I'm going to run my needle, go back into the incision, and come out the side about 1 inch in, pull it tight, and I'm not going to tighten the seam down. The reason why I'm not going to tie this tight is over the next few days while this is drying, I'm going to be able to manipulate this seam, tightening and loosening it if I need to manipulate the skin. Cut off the excess, leave a couple of inches so you have plenty of room to maneuver that skin. If you had wetted the belly incision area to get the feathers out, now would be the time you'd want to dry that. We did not in this case, so I'm going to take a small piece of wire and just kind of go back over the belly incision just to make sure that the feathers are aligning nicely, that nothing's been caught in the seam. I'm going to put the legs back where we want to have them, do kind of the final positioning. Start to groom these breath feathers back. We want to grab on to this whole feather track, right here, this whole track, and pull it up underneath the leg where it would naturally be on the pheasant. Same with the other side. Kind of check out everything again, make sure everything's lining up nicely. Now that we have the bird sewn up, we can go ahead and start getting it ready to be put on a piece of driftwood.